Imagine for a moment that someone managed to break into the headquarters of the CIA, walked past the armed guards, bypassed the biometric scanners, cracked the most secure safe in the building, and stole not money, not gold, but the blueprints for every secret weapon the United States possesses. And then, instead of selling them quietly on the black market, they walked outside, stood on the front lawn, and started throwing those blueprints into the wind for anyone to grab. It sounds like the plot of a Hollywood thriller. It sounds impossible. But in the summer of 2016, this is exactly what happened in the digital world. And the victim wasn't a bank or a corporation. It was the National Security Agency, the NSA. It began on a quiet Saturday morning, August 13th, 2016. The world was distracted. The Rio Olympics were in full swing. The US presidential election was heating up. Twitter was flooded with noise. But amidst the chaos, a new account appeared. @ShadowBrokers, double S. They posted a link to a pastebin file and a manifesto written in broken, almost comical English. It read, "We follow Equation Group traffic. We find Equation Group source range. We hack Equation Group. We find many, many cyber weapons. You see pictures. We give you some Equation Group files free. You see? This is good proof, no? Enjoy. You will find many, many attacks. You will find many, many exploits." At first, the cybersecurity community laughed. It looked like a prank, a scam. Equation Group was the name security researchers gave to the most advanced, most secretive, and most feared hacking unit in history. A unit universally understood to be the NSA's elite, tailored access operations team. You don't just hack the NSA. The NSA hacks you. But the laughter stopped within hours. Security experts began to download the free sample files the shadow brokers provided. As they unpacked the code, their blood ran cold. These weren't just random scripts. These were zero-day exploits, tools that could bypass the firewalls of Cisco, Juniper, and Fortinet, the hardware that runs the backbone of the entire internet. The code was elegant, complex, and undeniably authentic. It contained specific strings and formatting that only the Equation Group used. The impossible had happened. The most powerful intelligence agency on Earth, the digital eyes and ears of the American empire, had been compromised. Someone had stolen the keys to the kingdom, and they were holding an auction. They demanded 1 million Bitcoin, roughly $500 million at the time, to release the rest of the files. But who were they? Were they Russian spies, a disgruntled insider, or something else entirely? As the panic set in at Fort Meade, one question hung in the air, a question that would soon haunt the entire world. If the good guys lost their weapons, what happens when the bad guys pick them up? To understand the magnitude of this theft, we have to understand what was actually stolen. We need to talk about the Equation Group. For decades, the NSA operated in the shadows. Their motto was "No such agency." Within this secretive world, there was an elite tier, the Tailored Access Operations, or TAO. These were the best of the best. The mathematicians, the code breakers, the prodigies recruited straight out of MIT and Stanford. They didn't just hack computers, they dominated them. They had tools that could rewrite the firmware of your hard drive, making a virus invisible to antivirus software and impossible to delete even if you wiped your computer. They had tools that could turn on your microphone, activate your webcam, and log your keystrokes, all without a single pixel changing on your screen. They were responsible for Stuxnet, the most sophisticated cyber weapon ever deployed, which physically destroyed Iranian nuclear centrifuges by spinning them out of control while playing back a loop of normal data to the monitoring screens. They were the gods of cyberspace. They hoarded zero-days flaws in software that the manufacturers don't know about. Instead of reporting these flaws to companies like Microsoft or Apple to fix them, the NSA kept them secret. They weaponized them. These weapons were classified at the highest level. They were considered as dangerous as physical missiles. They were kept on air-gapped networks, systems that are physically separated from the internet, buried deep within secure facilities protected by armed guards and biometric locks. The idea that someone could extract gigabytes of this weaponized code was inconceivable. It violated every protocol of operational security. But the shadow brokers didn't just steal the code. They humiliated the NSA. The persona they adopted, this Borat-like broken English character, was a deliberate mockery. They referred to the NSA as wealthy elites. They signed off their messages with the shadow brokers. It was theatrical. It was a performance. This led to immediate speculation about the culprit. The timing was suspicious. It was the height of the tension between the US and Russia. The DNC hacks had just been revealed. Many believed this was the Kremlin's response. A signal flare sent from Moscow to Washington saying, "You expose us, we expose you. You think you are secure? Look at what we have." However, other theories were darker. Edward Snowden, the famous whistleblower, tweeted that this looked like an insider job. He suggested that someone left the tools on a staging server, a computer used to launch attacks, and forgot to clean it up. Or worse, someone within the NSA, a mole, had physically walked out of the building with the data on a thumb drive. The NSA said nothing. They couldn't. To deny it would be to admit they had been hacked. To confirm it would be to admit they had been hoarding dangerous weapons that were now loose in the wild. So they remained silent. But in the halls of the NSA headquarters in Maryland, the silence was screaming. They were frantically auditing their systems, interrogating their staff, and waiting for the other shoe to drop. They didn't have to wait long. For months, the shadow brokers played a sadistic game of cat and mouse. They teased new files. They canceled their auction when no one paid the outrageous sum. They posted rants about the US election. They were unpredictable, chaotic, and terrifying. The FBI launched a massive manhunt. They turned the NSA inside out. In late August, they arrested Hal Martin, an NSA contractor. When the FBI raided his home, they found it filled with 50 terabytes of stolen data. Hard drives in his car, documents in his shed, sensitive material piled up in his kitchen. He was a hoarder. It seemed like they had found their man. But there was a problem. Hal Martin had been in custody since August, yet the shadow brokers were still posting. They were still active. Martin might have been a leaker, but he wasn't the shadow brokers. The trail went cold. Then came April 14th, 2017, Good Friday, or as the cybersecurity world would come to call it, Black Friday. The shadow brokers published a new post. "Don't forget your base," they wrote. And with that, they released the Lost in Translation leak. This wasn't a sample. This was the motherlode. Included in this dump was a tool called EternalBlue. EternalBlue was a masterpiece of malicious engineering. It exploited a flaw in the Microsoft Windows SMB protocol feature used for file sharing that exists on almost every Windows computer in the world. The NSA had discovered this flaw years earlier. They had named it, weaponized it, and kept it secret for more than 5 years. This tool allowed a hacker to compromise a computer without the user doing anything. You didn't need to click a link. You didn't need to download a file. If your computer was connected to the internet and had this port open, EternalBlue could walk right in, take administrative control, and execute any code it wanted. It was the digital equivalent of a master key that opened every door in a city. Security researchers who analyzed the dump were horrified. They realized immediately that this was weapon-grade uranium left on a park bench. Microsoft had quietly issued a patch for the vulnerability just a month earlier, likely tipped off by the NSA in a last-minute panic, but millions of machines around the world had not updated yet. Hospitals, banks, railways, government offices, personal laptops. They were all sitting ducks. The shadow brokers had just handed a loaded gun to every cybercriminal, every script kiddie, and every rogue state on the planet. And the safety was off. The warning lights in server rooms across the globe began to blink red. The world held its breath. The weapon was out. It was only a matter of time before someone pulled the trigger. And exactly 1 month later, someone did. May 12th, 2017, a Friday. It started in Asia. Computer screens flickered and went black, only to reignite with a terrifying red window, a padlock icon, a countdown timer, and a message. Oops, your files have been encrypted. It was ransomware. Nasty, but common. Usually, ransomware spreads through phishing emails. Someone makes a mistake, clicks a bad link, and infects their own machine. But this was different. This wasn't spreading by human error. It was hunting. It was called WannaCry, and inside its code, beating like a dark heart, was EternalBlue, the very weapon the shadow brokers had stolen from the NSA and released just weeks earlier. The malware tore through the internet at light speed. It didn't just infect individual computers, it jumped from machine to machine across networks, scanning for that open SMB port, injecting the payload and moving on. It was a digital wildfire. By the time the sun rose over Europe, the situation was catastrophic. In the United Kingdom, the National Health Service, the pride of the nation, collapsed. Hospitals were paralyzed. Doctors running to check patient records found their computers locked. MRI scanners shut down. Blood fridges couldn't be monitored. Ambulances carrying heart attack victims and women in labor were diverted mid-route because emergency rooms couldn't accept them. Doctors were forced to use pen and paper, running through corridors shouting updates because the digital nervous system of the hospital was dead. The NSA's weapon was no longer a theoretical threat. It was now putting actual human lives at risk in London, in Madrid, in Moscow. Spanish telecommunications giant Telefonica went dark. The Russian Interior Ministry was hit. The German railway system displayed the ransom note on station monitors instead of train schedules. FedEx in the United States saw their logistics network grind to a halt. In total, WannaCry infected over 200,000 computers in 150 countries within 24 hours. It was the first time in history the world witnessed a truly global cyber attack. And the cruel irony was inescapable. The tool tearing the world apart had been built by the United States government to protect national security. The attack was eventually stopped, not by the NSA, but by a young British researcher named Marcus Hutchins, who accidentally found a kill switch in the code. But the damage was done. Billions of dollars were lost. Trust was shattered. And yet, the shadow brokers weren't done. They watched the chaos they had unleashed, and they seemed to revel in it. They released a monthly subscription service, promising more exploits to anyone willing to pay. They taunted the NSA again. But then, something shifted. As the heat from the FBI and international intelligence agencies reached a boiling point, the shadow brokers went quiet. They posted a final message claiming they were going dark to cash out their earnings. Just like that, they vanished. They left behind a broken NSA, a terrified world, and a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Who were they? Years have passed since the leaks stopped. The investigation into the shadow brokers has been one of the most intense counterintelligence operations in American history. Yet no one has ever been charged with being a member of the group. The theories remain just that, theories. The prevailing wisdom points to Russia. The timing of the leaks always seemed calibrated to cause maximum political damage to the US, often distracting from Russian scandals. The linguistic analysis of their manifestos suggests a deliberate attempt to fake broken English, perhaps to look like an amateur collective rather than a state actor. But many insiders still believe in the second Snowden theory. They argue that the shadow brokers had access to files that couldn't have been stolen remotely. They knew the internal naming conventions. They knew exactly what to take to hurt the agency the most. This suggests a betrayal from within, a disgruntled employee who walked out with the crown jewels and handed them over to an enemy, or leaked them himself. The legacy of the shadow brokers is not just the chaos of WannaCry. It is a fundamental shift in how we view cyber warfare. For decades, governments argued that they needed to hoard vulnerabilities like EternalBlue to fight terrorism and espionage. They argued that they could keep these weapons safe. The shadow brokers proved them wrong. They proved that in the digital age, you cannot build a weapon that only you can use. A cyber weapon is like a biological virus. Once it escapes the lab, it infects everyone. It doesn't care if you are an enemy combatant or a grandmother in a British hospital. The NSA rebuilt its walls. They changed their protocols. But the trust is gone. The tech giants, Microsoft, Google, Apple, now view the government not just as a partner, but as a liability. We live in a world built on code. Our money, our power grids, our hospitals, our nuclear silos, they are all governed by lines of text. And somewhere, in the dark corners of the internet, the rest of the tools stolen by the shadow brokers are still out there. Or perhaps, new groups have found new weapons, waiting for the right moment to start the auction. The shadow brokers showed us a terrifying truth. The most dangerous hackers aren't the ones trying to break in. They are the ones waiting for the guards to drop their keys. And somewhere, in the silence of the digital void, they are still watching.